Hi there, welcome to my channel. My name is Sarah and I am the style coach. Today's video is all about the colour blue and how to wear it. So we're going to be talking about all things blue. It is a cool colour, so what does that mean for warm undertone people? Does anything else affect the colour? We're going to get that cleared up for you today and get those questions answered. If you'd like to work with me one-to-one, you can check out my services in my FAQ page, which is linked down below. You'll find a guide there on the services that I offer, like colour consultations, body shape consultations, and much more, as well as packages, and of course my online courses as well. I work with people in person and online all over the world, so do get in touch if that's of interest to you. Before we get started, can I please ask you to like the video if you enjoyed it and learned something new? Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you'd like to do so, you can give some super thanks and I would be super grateful. Let's get started with today's video. I worked with somebody recently who turned out to be a warm spring. And they said to me, well, Sarah, if I'm a warm spring and I need to move towards colours with yellow undertones, what does that mean for blue? Because blue is a naturally cool colour. And I thought it was a great question, and I'm sure that she's not the only person out there wondering what the answer is to this question. So I'm going to clear that up for you today using my colour wheel as well as my coloured drapes to demonstrate the various points I'll be making as we go through this. Let me know if you are a person who loves to wear blue or actively avoids blue and why, or what specific type of blue you think works best for you. And you might, if you know your season, let us know as well, because I think that'll be interesting to find out. The first thing to know about blue is that it is a primary colour. There's nothing that we can add to it to make blue blue. It's just simply blue. So we don't have this quantity of yellow that's making it blue. We don't have any other quantities of anything else to make it cooler, because blue is blue. So it is naturally sitting on the cooler side of the colour wheel. You can't get much cooler than blue. So with that in mind, those of you who have the cooler undertones don't have to be overly concerned with what specific type of blue that you wear so much, because even if we were to add something to make it warmer, which I'll get into in a moment, you're still basically on the cooler side of the colour wheel. It's still cool, although it's getting warmer. So you don't have to overthink it, but there's other factors that you will want to think about. We'll get into that a little bit later as well. True blue is actually a very wearable colour for a lot of people, even those of you with warm undertones. A little bit like true red. True red is also a very wearable colour for many people. I would say yellow's the kind of exception to our primary colours, in that you've got to be careful if you do have those cooler undertones that you actually go for something a little bit more acidic. And I have a video on yellow, you can check that out as well. But our primary colours of red and true blue are quite universal, I would say, and very wearable. I would add to that though, that I do believe that the people on the cooler side wear it best, because it's naturally cool. Now here we're only talking about one aspect of colour, that's temperature, and we're going to stick to temperature for a little while, but later on I'm going to get into the other things that you need to consider, the other aspects of colour that are important for many of you, that will play maybe a greater role in your colour choice. So let's go back to our colour wheel for a moment. If we consider true blue the very coolest point of the colour wheel, no matter which direction we go in the colour wheel, we are adding an element of warmth. So in this case, if we were to move in the direction of yellow, which is our naturally warm colour, we move through into this kind of a blue-green or aqua, and this starts to become more wearable for those of you on the warmer side. Same with green. As we move into yellow-green, you start to want to be a little bit cautious of this if you're on the cooler side. This is our cutoff point between green and yellow-green as we move on to the warmer side of the colour wheel. So our cooler undertone people will want to be careful as we move into yellow-green. You've gone too far away from true blue at this stage. So while we are indeed getting warmer, we're still on the cooler side. So don't let that throw you off, that it is getting warmer, but it's still on the cooler side. It just becomes more available, more wearable to those of you with the warm undertones. The cool people don't really have to worry too much about this one. If we move in the other direction, it's not yellow that we're adding to the colour, but actually red. Red is on our warmer side of the colour wheel, and as we add little doses of red into our blue, it starts to become more purple. Now again, you're still on the cooler side, but it becomes more wearable for those of you with the warm undertones as we add more red into it. Let me show you an example with my drapes. So if we call this True Blue here, this is part of our winter family here. If we start to add red into this color, small doses of red, we start to have something more that looks like a purple than it does a blue. Now, of course, there's many different stages in between this that gets us here, but I'm kind of taking bigger jumps here. So we add red and we get this purple. If we continue to add red, we end up with something that's almost this kind of aubergine color or eggplant, depending on where you are in the world. And we start to see the red that's more evident here. So we started off in the coolest place with True Blue, started adding red, but indeed, you know, these colors, even with the small doses of red in them, are very wearable for the cool undertones. They just become more wearable for those of you with warmth in your undertones, or indeed warmth as a dominant characteristic for you. You really want to start looking out for a little bit of red in your blues. If we move in the other direction towards yellow, so we're adding small doses of yellow now into our True Blue. And again, I'm taking kind of giant steps here along the color wheel just to get through it a little bit quicker for you. But if we start to add in yellow, we'll get this kind of almost blue-green here. You know, it starts to look like a little bit like turquoise. Then as we add more yellow in, we arrive at green. Beyond that, we're into yellow-green, and that is when we end up in a much warmer place, more obviously warm. So little doses of yellow will take you on this kind of a journey, eventually ending up in a yellow-green, which is then really not for the cooler side people, but for the warmer side. Now, if that has you a bit bamboozled and a bit lost, don't worry too much about the temperature itself, because at the end of the day, choosing a blue's naturally cool. There's other qualities that you can look for in colour. So in the Munsell colour system, there's 3 qualities to colour. Temperature, which we've just discussed. Now we are on the cooler side. So what else could we consider if we want to get this as close as possible to working from our colour palette? Well, we can also consider chroma or intensity of our blue. That's going to play a big role for you. So if you are on the brighter side of the spectrum, you're going to choose blues that are more vivid than they are soft. So going back to our True Blue as an example, if you're on the brighter side, you're going to wear this really well. And of course, you kind of need to understand where you lie in your chroma, and if you've had a colour analysis, you should understand that fully. So a clear or brighter blue is the way to go if you're on the brighter side. So if you're a bright winter or a bright spring, you choose the brightest level of blue that there is. On the other side of the spectrum, as we add grey to a colour, it becomes softer. So comparing this to this kind of grey blue, this is going to be more suitable to those of you in the summer category or even into autumn. So if your dominant characteristic is bright, lean into those brighter blues. And if your dominant characteristic is soft, regardless if you're summer or autumn, lean into the softer blues. Beyond chroma and temperature, we have another quality that we can consider, and that is value. So value is how much white is in a colour versus how much black is in a colour. So if we add white to a colour, do you know what it's called? It's called a tint. And if we add black to a colour, it's called a shade. So if you are somebody who is a light summer or light spring, you're going to want to think about your true blue plus white added to it, and it'll give you a much lighter version of blue, something like this. Of course, you've got to take into consideration the brightness and all of that as a whole, but generally, if you are light, you're leaning into the blues that are on the lighter side like this. If you are on the darker side, if you're a deep autumn, deep winter, then black has been added to your true blue, giving you navy. So remember I said that our true blue is a very wearable colour for most people. When we add black and when we add white to a colour, it's still true blue. It's just a tint of true blue or a shade of true blue. So that's why we say that a lot of people can wear navy very well. I would say that it looks phenomenal on those who can wear the darker colours well, much like those of you who have lighter features and can wear the lighter colours better are going to look best in the light colours. So if you're still with me and you're not completely lost, to summarise, true blue is very wearable for a lot of people. In my opinion, it absolutely looks the best on our cool undertoned people because it sits on the cooler side of the colour wheel. We can make it warmer, although it still sits on the cooler side, we can make it warmer by adding small doses of yellow, small doses of red, but it is still on the cooler side of the colour wheel. Always take into consideration the other qualities that exist in your own colour palette. So we're always going to be thinking about temperature one, we've got that covered because we're wearing blue. Second one is chroma. Think about the intensity that you're wearing and think about the value of colour that you're wearing as well and what works best for your particular features. That's it for today's video. I do hope you enjoyed it and maybe even learned something new, and I'll see you again next week for another video. Take care. Bye bye.